What's up, everybody? So today I'm going to be doing probably one of the scariest projects I've ever done on my own. And that's because I don't usually go under the hood of the car. Now, like, I've installed solar systems before. I've modified this solar system, even though it was installed when I got the van. I've made changes as necessary to make it work for me. But what's always with the solar system is sort of an isolated system. Now, what I've run into consistently since I crossed the country and came back, actually it happened more towards the tail end of getting towards Baltimore and some on the way back, and a lot while I was on the Crocker's property, is that my 300 watts of solar wasn't doing much to keep my batteries topped off. Now, luckily, I did install a battery charger, which allowed me to make a shore power connection while I was at the Crockers, and so I used that battery charger to keep my batteries topped off most of the time, which was great. And the Jackery lasts as long as it lasts. Honestly, with a full power Jackery, I've been able to back up my charge and just keep the solar running the fridge pretty efficiently over the course of a few days. But now I'm at the point where I've pretty much used a lot of my backup Jackery power, and I can't get my solar power charge back up enough to really get the Jackery back to 100%, and I'm not driving enough to use driving to get the Jackery back up to 100%. So I've pretty much tapped out a lot of my power because I've had some overcast days. Yes, even here in Northern California, it was actually raining yesterday. I think I got a joke amount of solar yesterday. But obviously, what I've kind of wanted to set up, and I was on the fence about it before I left California, because I was 100% every day before I left California. Through like the beginning of my trip, I was 100% almost every day. Like, solar was really doing its thing, and I didn't really have any problems. And I think I might have been somewhere near Virginia where that started to not happen as much, where my batteries just were not getting topped off. Long story short, I've known for a while that I've needed to come up with a way to connect my charging power while I'm driving to my solar battery. And so I was researching those little switches that you can use. I was researching, I forget what those things are called. The name is gone if it comes to me. I've looked into DC to DC chargers. What I really wanted was a DC to DC charger, but when I was looking into the installation, I still felt like not secure that I could handle that project on my own. They also can get really pricey. I do feel like they're the safest option, especially if you have like a lithium battery bank, which I don't, and just a regular starting battery in your car. I still think like a DC to DC charger sort of mediates that situation a little better than anything else. And I still think it's like the safest thing out there. But when I really, really started looking into what I could accomplish on my own, I decided to go with one of these guys, which is a dual battery isolator kit for a 12-volt system. And just looking at the install, I was like, okay, I can handle this, and it seems like it'll work for my situation. The difference between this and like one of those switches, because the safe, and maybe you've seen people install a switch that they can manually click on themselves once they start their engine, and that'll send a charge back to their battery as well. The thing about those is you have to consciously sort of be aware of those, and this kicks on itself. If it's hooked up properly, it'll kick on itself when it hits 13.3 volts. I think that's what the voltage is. So once you turn on the car, if the battery is not at 13.3 volts, this will not kick on. Once it gets to 13.3 volts, then this will power up. And it will support both batteries being charged by the car while the car is running. And then once that battery voltage drops, i.e. once you turn the car off, then this should also turn itself off, and therefore not be like draining your batteries to empty. Which is the problem when you do direct connections, is you're essentially making a parallel battery between your house battery and your engine battery. And so, like, I'm not sure that this is like the best method, but I feel like it's the one that I can handle after a lot of research. I was looking at because most of my system is built off of Renogy products. I was looking at the Renogy DC to DC charger, and I really didn't understand how to do that starter ignition switch hookup. And so I decided I was just going to get away from that. If I don't understand it, I'm not going to F around with it and mess up my car. Whereas this one felt completely like something I could handle. The connection seemed pretty direct. And so I felt like I could handle this kit. Now, this kit has most of what I need, but in my situation, I needed something else, which is what these two things are. And these are called side post battery extenders. Now, the battery in my engine has side posts. The posts are not on top, which has made it hard to jump the car. And what I found out about these is if you switch out your side posts for side post extenders, it's just a little like easier to jump the car as well, because basically this short side, it's what's going to replace the connection that's already there, and then the long side is what you use to hook up accessories to. So this side will be exclusively, this side will be exclusively handling the connection between the car battery already, and this will be what I add accessories to. In this case, my battery isolator kit will be connected to this side of the side post extension. I guess it's better to see that way. And then you just bolt it back on. So I got side post extenders for that reason. It also, there should be plenty of room left, so actually make it easier for me to jump the car if I ever need to do it in the future, because right now it's really hard to grip onto it just because of the way the side post attachment is designed. So that needed to happen. In addition to that, I got a battery monitor. Now I do have the BT1, which connects directly to my LPPT charge controller, but I've had a terrible time connecting to that app. That app is terrible. It's terrible for monitoring my batteries, and where the charge controller is, I can't see it unless I get out the car, go all the way around and look at it through the back door, and there's just not a good place to put it inside the vehicle where I can see it. And so I got this to add to the battery so that I can actually see if the device is performing the way that it's supposed to before, that being the dual battery isolator, and also any situation where I just want to quickly check the charge on my batteries. This hopefully will help me do that a little bit more efficiently. And then the other thing I got was I got a little socket plug that still provides USB ports, but also gives me a voltage readout on my car battery. And I got that also so I can see what's going on with my car battery, because recently I had my car battery die a couple of times when I was just sitting on the Crocker's property not driving for a bit. And so it'd be easier to see what's going on with my battery if I have this little USB port, this little USB thing plugged in that just gives me a display on what the battery reading is. And I feel like all of that will just make it a little easier to keep an eye on both of my batteries, both the engine battery and the solar battery. But what I'm just hoping today, because like I said, I don't go under the hood. I usually don't mess with the things that make the car run too much. And so I'm a little nervous about it. This is probably the boldest sort of thing I've tried to do to the camper van as far as like an electrics install, and I'm only semi-confident in it at this exact moment. So we'll see how this goes. But if this works, I'll be able to keep my fridge on. Whenever I'm driving, that supplementary charge will be going to my house battery no matter what the situation. And hopefully I'll have to worry a little less about having the power I need when I need it. One of the reasons my editing slowed down is I didn't always have enough power to keep my laptop charged. It just takes a lot of time to edit a video sometimes, depending on the complexity of the video, how many video clips are becoming the final video, how much additional editing I do on top of that. So that laptop is running, and a lot of times even if I have a full battery, at some point I have to plug in. But if I'm barely keeping my fridge on, and I have to make a choice between keeping my fridge running and keeping my laptop on, the fridge running is more important. And actually, even with my health and weight loss journey, a lot of the decisions I've made recently in the last couple of days about what I was going to eat was based on me not wanting to lose too much food in the fridge, not being able to keep temperature all the time, or being off occasionally. And so I was making a lot of choices based on that because I don't want to waste food. It's a lot of times why I depend on non-perishable food, which in most cases is more processed than food that will perish. So it does affect those decisions as well. And so I'd like to balance that out a little bit more by, creating a situation where I can keep the fridge on. I mean, like, that is the biggest challenge in my van life right now. I know, like, it can be a big deal for, like, other people as well. It's just keeping the fridge running, and, like, how much of a power sacrifice it can be to keep a fridge running. So if you can deal with the cooler, I got annoyed with it after a while. It's not a bad thing to deal with, because then at least, like, you can be more dedicated in your power use. I mean, I think, like, even though this fridge isn't pulling a lot of power, anything that's pulling power constantly. Oh, and the other thing is Mickey has a water fountain in his little cat cubby, as I like to call it, under the bed. He has a water fountain there that runs by electricity. Now, mind you, I could just put a water bowl down there and that would solve that. I just heard cats prefer water fountains, and, like, so I want him to stay hydrated. Cats can have problems with hydration, so that's just me being an overactive parent. There's an easy solve to that. In fact, I turned off his water fountain last night, and I put just, like, a little bowl of water under there, so if he really wanted water, there was water available. But it's a challenge. Like, power is one of the most interesting challenges to van life. Solar is not a cure-all. Depending on your situation, you may not be able to run a generator all the time. To run a generator, it needs exhaust and all these. Forget the fact that it needs fuel. It's not something that you can just sit on the floor inside your van with all the windows rolled up and run it to have additional power, even though it's honestly a more powerful source than solar sometimes, unless you have, like, a whole lot of money. So it's just one of those challenges. It's one of those things you deal with, and it's a part of van life. And if you can, start out with all of the options, which is, I never thought shore power would come into play, and then it did. If you can start out with all of the options, you always have a backup. And that, I think, is a good thing. But now I'm going to try to get that final option installed in my van. Forgot that I mentioned earlier, right now 2 fuses are stored in here, but I'll only be installing it with 1. But I'm adding an A&L fuse to my system just as extra protection. Alright, so here we go. The other interesting part of this project is my battery is actually on the passenger side of the van. It's on the, frontmost passenger side of the van. My house battery, so it means I have to run cable from here all the way across the trunk of the car, and then all the way back on the interior, of course, to the house battery, which is back here beside the most rear driver's side area of the van. Now, what I will say about the new build is it makes accessing the batteries for projects like this much easier. I know, Dawn, we haven't got a tour. The power is, in fact, disconnected. I did all that off camera just because it took some time. And then this battery is completely disconnected from anything right now. The charge controller is not on. So absolutely everything except the car itself has been disconnected. And so that's what I need to do first. I need to get the side posts installed. Once the side posts are installed, then I can actually start installing the voltage sensitive relay, which will provide a dual battery setup for the house battery to the vehicle battery. The first thing I did was get everything spread out on a table outside, just so I could see it all laid out in front of me. The next thing I had to do was get the old side posts out so that I could put the new side post extenders in. It was actually quite harder than expected, and it took quite a while to get those little suckers out. But eventually I did, and I was ready to replace those short bolts with longer bolts. Before I did anything else, I wanted to hear the car turn over. After that, I figured out the placement of the fuse. As well as a location for the relay box itself. Then I did my best to estimate my cable length from the outside of the vehicle. Once I had all my cable lengths figured out, it was time to do some crimp connections. Unfortunately, this is where my camera, aka my phone, kind of ran out of battery, and I couldn't stop the project to wait for it to charge up. So everything's a bit of a mess, but I'm kind of in a rush because the day is an engine away, and I need to get this all hooked up and know that it's ready to go. Unfortunately, when the camera died, I could not stop working, so I continued to charge it while I continued working. So one of the main things I did first, before I bring you guys back around to the front, I'm going to take you to the back. Literally, I have all my doors open. I have all kinds of stuff pulled out. So here we go. So I kind of had these cables cleaned up, and now they're kind of a wreck again. But down here, there is a red cable. It's not that one. It's that one. That red cable is running to the voltage sensitive relay. Then we have the battery charger, the fuse block, the charge controller. I'm sorry, this is the charge controller, the fuse block, and the inverter, all connected to here and also connected to negative. Now for the voltage sensitive relay, there is a black cable coming out that's connected to ground, and I just connected it to one of my door bolts. The battery charger is up here. And basically, all I have to do is run this plug out the back door, and then I'm able to plug in to shore power. It's not a perfect setup. It's not the neatest setup, but it works. It could definitely use some cleaning up. So right here under the steering wheel is the actual relay. Like I said, this relay came with an override switch. Well, it had a wire for an override switch that I wired in. Again, not the most beautiful work. I'm going to throw some electrical tape over all this. I did run short on my cable, so I'm using this as sort of a bridge to get to the rest of this cable to get all the way to the relay. I just had a really, really long run from the back of the van on the opposite side of where the battery is in the engine bay. And then we have these cables coming across. I personally added a fuse block just for extra protection, and then it goes right down here to the battery. I have not started the engine to see if it'll work, so we're about to find out. So that needs some work as far as like cleaning up, being a little neater, you know, all those things. But in general, I'm pretty proud of myself. Like, I was so afraid of getting under there and touching like the car battery, but it seems to be going fine. Just like the instructions said, as soon as the engine turned on and it hit the proper voltage, which is 13.3, then it also allowed for the auxiliary battery to charge, and hopefully this will keep me in power a little bit better.